നമസ്കാരം. കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസം മലയാള മനോരമയുടെ ദ വീക്ക് എന്ന ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് പ്രസിദ്ധീകരണം ഒരു കുറിപ്പ് പ്രസിദ്ധീകരിച്ചു. 5 വർഷം മുമ്പ് അവർ വി.ഡി. സവർക്കറിനെക്കുറിച്ച് പ്രസിദ്ധീകരിച്ച ഒരു വാർത്ത തെറ്റായിരുന്നുവെന്നും അദ്ദേഹത്തെക്കുറിച്ച് അപമതിപ്പുണ്ടാക്കുന്നതിന് ആ വാർത്ത കാരണമായെന്നും അതിൽ ഖേദം പ്രകടിപ്പിക്കുന്നു എന്നുമായിരുന്നു സ്റ്റോറി. വാർത്തയിലെ വസ്തുതകൾ എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് തെറ്റിയതെന്നോ വാർത്ത പിൻവലിക്കാനോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മാപ്പ് പറയാനോ ഉള്ള മറ്റ് ജേർണലിസ്റ്റിക്കായ കാര്യങ്ങളോ വിശദീകരിക്കാതെയായിരുന്നു ഈ മാപ്പ് പറച്ചിൽ. ഏറെ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ട ആ സ്റ്റോറി എഴുതിയ നിരഞ്ജൻ കാട്ട്ലെ എന്ന മാധ്യമപ്രവർത്തകൻ ഇതിനോട് പ്രതികരിക്കുകയാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം നമ്മോടൊപ്പം ചേരുന്നു. So let me start with the latest incident regarding the Week's apology to your story. The Week magazine, which published your investigative story Lamb Lionized about V.D. Savarkar, has now apologized. The magazine said they consider Savarkar in high esteem and your report led to some misrepresentation. What do you think is the basic reason for this change of heart after 5 long years?
Frankly speaking, I was also very shocked to know that Week has apologized, and the Week had submitted its apology, published its apology in their latest issue almost 5 years after the story got carried. And I'm extremely shocked. The reason is that I had submitted the story idea in our Southwest Bureau meeting in October 2015. And it was discussed among the participants of that meeting, which included the managing editors of the Week magazine and the owners of the Week magazine, Mr. Riyad Mathew, Mr. Philip Mathew, then the editor-in-chief, then the resident editors of Delhi, then the bureau chief of Delhi, bureau chief of Bangalore bureau, bureau chief of Chennai, then Gujarat and Maharashtra. And it is also included all the reporters from these regions. So it was discussed for over 1.5 hours. And I had submitted the documentary evidences that I had collected so far. And after 1.5 hours, Mr. Riyad Mathew intervened and he said that no, these are the times where we have to take stand and we are going to publish this story. So I was allowed to do the further investigation, for which I went to Delhi. I stayed in Delhi for a number of days. I visited in National Archives, the Nehru Memorial Library. I dug out almost every piece of paper that I could collect about this particular story. Then I went to Cellular Jail in Andaman, Port Blair. I stayed there for a week. I cross-checked their archives. I dug out documents. I met number of people there. I mean, there are people in Port Blair who are 100-year-old, and they know the history. They remember the history. They were jailed in Cellular Jail at that point in time. So I met a few of them. I interviewed them. Then I also received documents from the Indian Archives in London. Very incriminating evidences. Based on that, I wrote that story. Before writing that story, there was one more video conference which was attended by all reporters across the country and the bureau chiefs and the resident editors, and it was headed by Mr. Philip Mathew himself. After that meeting, Mr. Philip Mathew had said that if Niranjan has dug out so much of documents and evidences, this story is going to rock. This is going to be a talking point. And we carried that story. It was a super duper hit story. I mean, commercially speaking also, it received the highest circulation that particular month. But now after 4.5 years or 5 years, suddenly the Week has submitted this apology, which is extremely shocking. And I feel it is a cowardly act.
According to a News Laundry report, the editor of the Week magazine said that fighting of the case has become very difficult since the writer of the story, that is you, and the editor at the time of the publishing is no longer with the Week. So they decided to close the case. How do you feel how do you see this position taken by one of India's leading media house?
See, before publishing the story, this story was appointed a story director. Mr. Lucas Matthew was appointed as the story director. And he asked for every piece of documentary evidence that is written about in this particular story. So I had submitted more than 800 documents. 800, more than 800 documents to substantiate my story. It included the several mercy petitions of Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. It included the memorandum of understanding that he had signed with the then British Viceroy Linlithgow, where he had accepted, and I would like to quote, Savarkar had written that to fulfill the common objectives of the British Empire and Hindu Mahasabha, I will dedicate my rest of the life towards opposing Congress, Gandhi and Muslims.
Okay. That was the agreement
and
reached out
it was jointly signed. After that memorandum, it was a written agreement. Then from 1924 onwards, Savarkar started receiving a monthly pension of rupees 60. And I must point it out here that at that point in 1924, the price of gold was rupees 18 for 10 grams. Rupees 18, 18. And Savarkar was receiving a monthly pension of rupees 60.
Okay. From the British.
So he was receiving that pension from the British Empire for the services best known to him. But this collaboration was evident in the documentary evidences. Everything was submitted. Savarkar had appointed military recruitment boards of Hindu Mahasabha. Savarkar's younger brother was appointed as a member of the Central Recruitment Board by the British government. And Savarkar had thanked the Viceroy for appointing him on the Central Recruitment Board by a telegram. Savarkar had written letters to all his district office bearers across the country of Hindu Mahasabha to oppose 1942's Quit India movement. So everything was there in document, and I had submitted all those documentary evidences to the concerned story director and the news editor of the week magazine, Mr. Lucas Matthew. So those documentary evidences are there with them for the last 5 years. The person might have left the organization. T.R. Gopal Krishnan retired as editor-in-chief. I left the week. But the evidences are there. What is difficult in fighting the case? It is the lawyer who is presenting, who has to remain present in the court. Not everybody has to remain. So it is the lawyer who has to argue. Moreover, the author of the story is ready to fight and win the case. So what is difficult for the week magazine?
Did the magazine tell you about the fact that they are going to publish a regret, or they are?
No. They have not informed me. One more thing. Does it mean that the week is going to refuse all the awards that it got during the tenure of the former editor-in-chief? It is not going to refuse all those awards. So if you are not going to refuse all those awards, which it received when T.R. Gopal Krishnan was editor-in-chief, it is abandoning a journalist in the middle of a storm. But I am not the week. I am not WEAK. So I am going to fight the case and I am going to win the case, irrespective of whether week is there or not.
So how did you decide to do a story on V.D. Savarkar? What made you inquire about all these things, investigate about the...
Actually, what had happened is, in 2015, I had done a story on Gandhiji's first train yatra across India. Gandhiji had returned from South Africa in 1915, 9 January 1915. And he had traveled across India in the third class compartment of train to understand India, understand her miseries, understand the issues where people come together, understand the issues where they fall apart. And I thought that this is the only political leader who has done this kind of journey. Otherwise, all other yatras that we know of are done to divide India on several various lines, religious lines or several other motives. But this was the only yatra done to understand India. So to mark 100 years of his journey, I traveled across India in the same fashion, the third class compartment or the general compartment of the train, for 17,432 kilometers. And to understand what India thinks after 100 years, what India thinks about Gandhiji after 100 years. And during that journey, I had come across thousands of people in the train. I used to interact with them, with students, with middle-aged people, with old people, about Gandhiji and about the freedom struggle and the present situation in India. That time, in fact, I had thought of, this idea came to my mind, because the concluding paragraph of my first Gandhi Yatra story is that, and I would like to quote from that particular story, is that to offer respects for Savarkar, the entire cabinet of Narendra Modi gathered in the Central Hall of the Indian Parliament, and while offering their respects to Savarkar, every one of them had to turn their back towards Gandhiji, because Gandhiji's photograph is placed exactly opposite Savarkar's. And this is the political reality of Indian politics, that if you want to accept or if you want to offer respect to Gandhiji's ideology, then you have to turn your back towards Savarkar's Hindutva. So that was the concluding paragraph. And that point in time, I thought that there should be a story about Savarkar's Hindutva ideology and his entire political involvement as well. Because I have done one on Gandhiji. And luckily what so happened is, in 2015, Shiv Sena, the alliance partner of NDA at that time, started demanding Bharat Ratna to be conferred to Savarkar, yes, the highest civilian award to be conferred to Savarkar, because it was the 50th death anniversary of Savarkar in 2016. So I thought that this is a very timely story to revisit the history. And that's the reason why I did a story on Savarkar.
So this is the same Savarkar now the Malayalam Manorama, the week, has decided to hold in high esteem.
Yeah. And
what are the documents you dug up?
This is the mercy petitions, the 6 personal mercy petitions that he wrote, in which he, in one of the letters, I remember, he concluded his letters as, "Where else will this prodigal son turn but to the merciful doors of the parental government? I beg to remain your most obedient servant, V.D. Savarkar." That's how he signed. He had agreed to collaborate with the British in every possible manner, in writing, in those mercy petitions. Then the jail ticket history of V.D. Savarkar and his brother, where it is signed by both the jail superintendent and the prisoner, and where it is very evident and very clear that he was not put on that oil meal at all, not even for a day. But in his autobiography, he has completely lied that he was put on the oil meal and they had to work like a bull, like an animal they had to work, and how they were tortured and all that. But he was not put on the oil mill, according to the jail ticket history maintained for him. And then the monthly pension that he used to receive. Then the collaboration which he accepted with Viceroy Linlithgow. Then the letters that he wrote to his Hindu Mahasabha office bearers for opposing 1942's Quit India movement. Then the letters asking his office bearers to encourage people to join British Army through the military recruitment boards appointed by Hindu Mahasabha. Then the governor's letters to written to the administration to completely cooperate with the Hindu Mahasabha. So, lots of documents.
With all these,
the letter which he had written to Sardar Tara Singh of Punjab, where he had asked Sardar Tara Singh to announce Punjab as a Sikhistan, a separate nation of the Sikhs. Then a telegram that he had written to the Diwan of Travancore, CKR Iyer, congratulating him for announcing Travancore as the first Hindu nation born out of India. So all those letters, telegrams, his own archives. So all I had, dug out, and all those documents were.
With all these historical,
and if the week feels so highly, it is historical.
With all these historical documents with them, the week, the Malayalam Manorama has now decided to hold V.D. Savarkar on high esteem.
Yes. Probably they should, in fact, change the title of their magazine. There has to be a spelling correction in the week.
W-E-A-K.
It's no more W-E-E-K. It is W-E-A-K. Yeah. And if it holds Savarkar in so high esteem, then where their office is situated in Kochi and Kottayam. But so it is cowardly to abandon a journalist in the middle of such a storm.
So you said, how do you see this development? Is this another instance of a mainstream media succumbing to the pressure of the Sangha Parivar?
Yeah, there are. In my case, the week has not carried a number of my such stories. The week had not carried my accounts in northeastern states like Manipur. I had titled it "Killing for Glory," where there were number of hundreds of thousands of 1,500 fake encounters, where the officers were given gallantry awards, and the encounters turned out to be fake. Later on, the Supreme Court had to appoint a judicial commission to inquire into those 1,500 fake encounters. And I had submitted the story. I was given a timeline of submitting it by some Monday, 1 o'clock. And I submitted it at 1:20. And the news editor called me to say that you are late by 20 minutes and your story will remain in cold storage. But 15 days or 2 weeks later, Indian Express carried a week-long series of stories on those fake encounters. And the Supreme Court took cognizance and appointed a commission. But the week did not carry that particular story. The week did not carry a story where I was assigned. This particular story was assigned to me.
This Manipur story.
To go to Gujarat, live under cover as Rafiq Qureshi. Pardon?
The week assigned your...
Undercover as Rafiq Qureshi as a cattle trader. Yeah, this was not my idea. This was assigned to me.
The Gujarat story.
Yeah, the Gujarat cattle trader story, cow vigilante story. So this was not carried by the week. There are a number of such stories which did.
They did not cite any reason for not carrying that story, the Gujarat story.
No, they did not cite. No.
They rejected it or they kept in abeyance. You resigned from the week for refusing to publish a story on Judge Loya's death. After week declined the story, how did you reach out to Caravan? Or have you approached any other organization to get that story published?
Yes. In October 2017, the week management told me that they will not publish the story. In fact, during the Southwest Bureau meeting in October 2016, Mr. Philip Matthew had told me that right in the middle of the meeting, he said that according to the editors, there is no story in whatever you have filed. So that moment I decided to quit. And on the 6th of November, I resigned from the Week magazine. And I approached the Wire, I approached Quint, I approached Scroll, I approached Hindu and Frontline. And they all refused. I had also requested senior editors like Paranjoy Goa Thakurta and Kumar Ketkar to help me in getting that story out. So when Vinod Jose and the editor-in-chief of Caravan magazine and Hartosh Singh Bal, the political editor, when they came to know about this particular story, they immediately called me to Delhi and we started working on that particular story. They also appointed a team of investigative reporters to do the follow-up stories after breaking the main part of the story. So, which they did.
So you approached editors and publishers who are otherwise known for their spine, but even they declined to publish that story. That's what we understand.
Yes, even they declined. Of course, Siddharth Bhatia, the resident editor of Wire, he had talked to me and he said that they had published Rohini Singh's story on Jai Amit Shah's phenomenal rise in his income and phenomenal growth of his companies. So the Wire had received a defamation notice, and the Wire was going to get sued for it. So the editorial team of Wire thought that publishing Loya's story then can also indicate kind of way that probably the Wire is targeting somebody deliberately. So they said that we will do all the follow-up stories, but let someone else break it first. So the Caravan broke it, and of course Wire also did follow-up stories.
After your Judge Loya story, News Laundry did a story in which they said that you are facing challenges in getting a full-time job. You have faced huge challenges after publishing the Loya story. How did you cope up with that?
No, see, very frankly speaking, not full-time, I don't have a part-time job also. Now it is almost 4 years. And I did try at number of places. My name was suggested by very reputed editors to New Indian Express, then Indian Express, then Lukmat Times, then several other publications. The editors approved of my name, but the management didn't. So it means that probably the management was under pressure from the political dispensation. And that's the reason why I don't have a job until now.
How do you comment about the current state of Indian journalism?
See, I'll give you an example. In this decade, in these 10 years, 2011 to 2021, we have seen two very big protests happening in India. The first was India Against Corruption, led by Anna Hazare in Delhi, which was attended by 25 to 50,000 people every day. And every single mainstream media covered it 24/7, minute to minute. In 2021, 10 years later, we saw the farmer protests attended by lakhs of farmers every day for more than 150 days now. It's happening right there on the borders of Delhi, the national capital. But we don't see even a 90-second news clip in the mainstream media. So that shows that the mainstream media today has completely surrendered. Like even in case of Judge Loya, the mainstream media did not cover it. Not a single mainstream media covered it. Apart from Ravish Kumar doing 2 or 3 shows on NDTV Hindi. But rest of the media, regional or national, they did not cover it. So we know for a fact, you are also from my fraternity, we also know that the mainstream media is not giving real focus to the real issues.
What's the role of civil society now? Is the civil society become too indifferent?
Yeah, civil society. I have complaints with the civil society. I'm not happy with the civil society because civil society takes out candle marches when somebody rapes Nirbhaya in the middle of the night in a bus, because they know that the criminal must be a petty criminal doing such a heinous crime in the middle of a night in a bus. But when a judge dies, when Judge Loya dies, nobody takes out a candle march. Nobody lights the candle because they know that the perpetrator must be very powerful. So the civil society also plays a role that suits them. And in such case, and this happens because the mainstream media does not stand solidly behind it. I was brought up in a generation which believed that it is a journalist's responsibility to tell the truth and shame the devil. Now it has completely stopped. How many journalists are today really shaming the devils? We are going through the worst kind of pandemic. There is shortage of vaccine, shortage of remdesivir, shortage of beds, shortage of oxygen, shortage of cremation grounds. and nobody is questioning the government. Mainstream media is saying spread positivity. What positivity does it expect people to spread when it is suffering the worst kind of pandemic, the worst kind of economic situation, the worst kind of unemployment in the history of India? But the mainstream media is still not standing behind solidly. And this is the pathetic situation that today we are in. But now it is the responsibility of the alternate media, like the web magazines or the web portals, who have to carry forward this motto of telling the truth and shaming the devil.
It's very nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much and wish you all the best. Thank you.
വാർത്തകൾ വേഗത്തിലറിയാൻ ഞങ്ങളുടെ യൂട്യൂബ് ചാനൽ സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്യൂ.